There's nearly 1 billion people. The number's actually just been revised down, which is great, but there's still 800 million people today living on the planet live without access to clean and safe drinking water. That's 1 in 9 people on the planet. It's a huge issue. It's almost unfathomable to understand these really big numbers. One of the ways when I talk to people about it, there's some really big stats out there. One of the stats is that more people die from lack of access to water and basic sanitation, simple issues, than all forms of violence, including war. Which means, I'm sure everyone in this room can appreciate and wants to see world peace one day. Or I hope everyone does. If not, kind of get out. But we think about world peace. World peace is kind of really hard. It's really hard. How do we get there? Could we ever as humans achieve it? We'd save more lives this year and every year if we got everyone a tap and a toilet than if we achieved world peace this year. So it's a huge number, and then what happens with water and sanitation as an issue is that it's really fundamental in terms of health. Particularly affects children. Diarrheal diseases particularly affect children. Kids under 5, there's over 4,000 kids lose their lives every day because of preventable diseases that could be directly avoided in the first place if they had access to basic sanitation and clean, fresh water. What this looks like in the developing world is a lot like this. Many of you have probably seen this. You've probably seen women particularly carrying their water every single day. The jerry can is actually the logo of Charity Water. We use it all the time. We call it the iPod of the developing world. You can't avoid this thing. You'll see these yellow jerry cans, these plastic jerry cans everywhere, and you'll see women and children carrying them on their heads each and every day. You can't take a day off from fetching water for your family. It's a daily task. And this is actually a lucky village in that there's a water pump here. They might have a long line for it, they might be losing all sorts of time fetching the water, but they do have a safe water source in their community. This is a picture I actually took last year in Central African Republic. Just a bit of a personal story to kind of understand what this is like. So this is a village called Mwale, deep in the jungle of Central African Republic. To get to Mwale, fly into Bengi, you've got to drive about 18 hours over forest cuttings and break a few four-wheel drives. So village is completely isolated. Village made up of Central Africans and the Bayaka people, who are a tribe there that have been forced out of the forest and their hunter-gathering lifestyle by logging. Mwale, our partner in Mwale, Jim Hocking, had been trying to bring water to this village for 10 years and had failed several times. They tried to hand dig a well, they couldn't get deep enough. They tried to drill a well, again, didn't get deep enough to hit the aquifer and had to just leave the village. So if you can imagine, if you live in this village, a well's coming into your village instead of the 2-mile walk to this water source, and then it had to leave. Eventually we were there in 2010, and the well that we tried to build kept caving in, so there was 20 stories of sand. The day we were there, though, we were there to drill a well, which was ultimately effective. And one of the things we always say is that water changes everything. So at this water point, where everyone in this village for their entire life, they've had to walk a couple of miles a day down a steep hill, climb over a fallen tree, go to this small, dirty, dank water point. I'm a farm boy, and it smelled like where our cattle drink from. But the life for these people was completely changed when a water point comes into their community on many fundamental levels. And that's the thing that we always talk about at Charity Water, is that the water crisis is completely solvable. We know how to do this stuff. We know hand-dug wells. If you've ever read a story about knights in castles in a siege, they have hand-dug wells in those buildings. It's been around for centuries and is often a solution that really works. Drill wells are a lot harder. You've got to take in $1 million drilling rig, drill down maybe 20 stories underground to hit an aquifer, but when you get there, there's clean and safe water available for people to drink. It also looks like systems, we talk about wells a lot, but there's also systems like spring protection systems where you'll build a huge unit, costs a couple of $100,000 at the top of a hill, funnel water down to tap stands. Biosand filters, I think they're super cool. We do this with a lot of partners, including in Cambodia. Small household units with a bunch of gravel in them and concrete. You can pour water that's not safe in the top, comes out completely safe. It also comes out chilled. So the people have a really nice option in their house to actually use that water because it's nice and chilled. And what this looks like, though, this is a community working to build a hand-dug well, in Ethiopia. Typically, the biggest issue in our sector is sustainability, and it's ensuring that villages take on ownership of the water projects. So one amazing way to do that is to have them help them build. And another way is we build a water committee in every community where a number of individuals, they're always predominantly women because fetching water is women's work in the majority of the developing world, who collect money from the community for maintenance, who fund some training, who make sure that if the well breaks, they're able to take ownership of it and fix their own well. And this is what it looks like when you hit one of those big aquifers underground. Another shot from Ethiopia, drilled well. You're a couple of 100 feet underground at this point. Heard a story from one of our donors who was in a village like this after the $1 million drilling rig had rolled in and hit water, and he was talking to a lot of the locals and talked to one of the elders, one of the older women in the community, and she asked her how she felt today. Everyone was celebrating, everyone was happy, and she said she was really angry. And he says, "Why? What's wrong?" And she said to him, "Well, do you mean to tell me that this clean water's been here under our feet all this time?" Her entire life she'd been walking to a swamp to get water for her family. And photos like this is something we see all the time. Just these smiling faces, this photo to me indicates how water changes everything. We put one of these photos on Instagram, which is a mobile phone picture sharing app, every single day. We put a picture of the day out on Twitter. I can't get enough of these kind of pictures. So that's a quick intro to the water issue. And now I'll talk a little bit about how Charity Water came about and where we are today. Now, Charity Water's story is really, I'd say, different to every non-profit for a handful of reasons. And a big part of that is our founder's story. So we're only 5 years old. We're down here in New York City. We've only got 30 staff at the moment. Our founder, Scott Harrison, didn't have your traditional path to non-profit leadership. He spent 10 years, he spent his 20s, as a nightclub promoter, which is probably not on anyone's resume here. Scott had basically grown up in a very conservative family. His mother had become very sick, and he basically rejected his faith, rejected his upbringing, thought, what's the thing that I can do that's the opposite of everything I've done? And it was nightclub promoting. Let's get really fancy people wasted in clubs, and he did that for a decade. And apparently was really, really good at it. And then he had a change of life, a change of heart. He threw that in. He looked for a non-profit that would take him, and not many non-profits would take a nightclub promoter and let them do anything. And he applied. Eventually, an organisation called Mercy Ships took him on as a photographer. And he headed out to Liberia. Mercy Ships had a hospital ship there, Western surgeons. They would do all sorts of surgeries that the local hospitals couldn't do. A lot of facial tumours, a lot of issues relating to water and sanitation fundamentally. He lived on the ship for 2 years. He spent a lot of time in Liberia just out of the civil wars, so 7 years back. And he really started to understand just how impactful big changes can be in the developing world, and particularly how water is a fundamental issue. He came back to New York City. He was doing some gallery shows, he was trying to tell the story, trying to get people to care about this work he'd seen, this life-changing experience he'd had. And he'd found that his friends were jaded, they didn't want to give anymore, they didn't know where their money went, they didn't feel like they could make an impact, they weren't excited by trying to make a difference in the world. And he had a really impactful moment when he went to Soho House, where I've been once and felt really out of place here in New York City. And someone bought him a $16 martini. And all he could think was, this is a bag of rice that would feed a family for a week in the developing world. What are we doing? So he started up Charity Water. Another interesting thing, you'll notice the brand name, and this is actually always really annoying as someone who talks to a lot of media because everyone likes to capitalise it, is Charity, Coal and Water. And when Scott's every inch the entrepreneur, and when he started he thought, all right, we'll start with Charity Water and then we'll sort that out, and then we'll do Charity Malaria, and then we'll do Charity HIV, and we'll do Charity Education. Water's going to keep us busy for a while. We're kind of stuck here, but we started with water because it's the most fundamental piece. It's the most fundamental piece in our eyes in bringing forward development. So that's 5 years back. Scott's got this great idea. I'll start Charity Water. I'm going to reinvent charity. I'm going to do a different breed of charity. How do we get started? Well, he drew on his professional experience from the nightclub days and started with a birthday party. Scott's really good at throwing parties. He spent a decade doing that. So he threw a birthday party, September 7th, 2006. Had about 200 people turn up. I get 20 people at my birthday party. Feel pretty good about that. 200 people turn up. They pay $20 at the door. Really cool DJ, free booze, fancy people, that kind of thing. Then what Scott did was took all the money that he'd taken on the door for his birthday, said, I don't want any gifts or anything, just donate, come and pay at the door, give 20 bucks. He took all that money, went to Uganda, built 6 wells, 3 new wells, rehabbed 3 wells, took a GPS unit he bought at Best Buy for 60 bucks, marked the wells, the DJ had paid, he got a grog company to supply the booze, every cent of the money they put at the door funded these wells. He took photos of them and then just sent them to every person who attended the party. Scott said some people didn't remember being at the birthday party in the first place, but then they got this report that they're 20 bucks and made this tangible difference and made this impact on the world. And that's something that we've seen at scale. Just $20 can give one person access to clean drinking water. Average cost of a water project in our experience is under $5,000. But a couple of fundamental things on that very first day have stuck with us forever. They always will, and they're really important to who we are and to how we operate. The first being 100%. Scott took every cent from the thing, paid for his own flights, but every cent that people gave at the door funded water projects, and we've kept that the case. So as we scaled 5 years in, we've never used a cent of public donations for administrative costs. We fund our operations from a completely separate budget. So we basically have 2 bank accounts, one for ops. I got the subway up here with my Metro pass. You know, we don't spend a lot of money. And one for water. We even pay back credit card fees. We do 75% of our fundraising online right now. It's a 2.5%, 3% fee all the time. We pay that back from operations fee. Operations we cover from a collection of major donors. We've got about 120 in a group called The Well that give on 3-year commitments, corporations, foundations. We also pretty much run on a shoestring, 30 staff and doing all our fundraising digital. My digital budget for this year is something like $10,000 and my fundraising target is $16 million. The other important thing, proof. Proving it, helping people see what they've done. So Scott, GPS unit from Best Buy, 6 wells, took photos. This is actually the GPS unit. Since day one, we've done that with every water project we've built. We've marked it with GPS, taken photos of it. We want to do a lot more to expand this over time, but at the start it was very breakthrough. Our partners are starting to do this at scale now. It's become very common in the sector. But really fundamental, we want people to see what's been done. We want to prove the impact. So fast forward from there, 5 years in, we've raised over $60 million, 6,500 water projects, over 2.5 million people served in 19 countries. And so the engine of growth has been big. And like every startup, we started off with a whole bunch of things. So we started off with a few core values, 100%. We started off with proving every dollar. We also started on with this rigid commitment to design and to brand. If you look at the Charity Water website, if you walk in our office, I even had our designer spend time on this presentation. I presented once with a presentation I made and got in a lot of trouble from our creative director because I can't make something that looks pretty like this. But this fundamental brand that we're trying to build a brand as well that people will love like a Nike or an Apple. We want to be people's favorite brand. We want to inspire them through our brand.
Hey Paul, speaking of brands, someone asked on Twitter, what kind of resources do you guys use to get the great photos that you guys are taking for all these pieces that you're showing?
Pretty simple, really. Our CEO still takes some photos. Our creative director takes a lot of photos when they're in the field. We had one staff person who did photography, video, and copywriting. We're now splitting that into one copywriter, photographer, because visual is so important to us. It's actually a copywriter with photo skills to the job description. We have to have photos there. And we're going to hire a filmographer. And then we've got a couple of really good freelancers who we might send for a few months and just let them go. But yeah, if you walk into our office, you'll see a huge wall of photos, and we've done photo displays early on. Its visuals are really important to our brand. The biggest driver, though, as we've expanded, has been this give up the birthday idea tied in with online fundraising. So Scott's first birthday party, September 7th, all those people came. They raised probably $20,000. Awesome. The next year, wanted to scale it 10 times because we always try to do that at Charity Water. Scaling Scott's birthday party 10 times hard because now we'd have like 4 days at Madison Square Garden if we'd done that for 5 years. So we had other people give up their September birthdays. So 2007, 92 people joined. They raised about $200,000 for water projects in hospitals and schools in Kenya. The next year, 2008, which is actually when I first heard of Charity Water because I'm a September baby, we asked more people to join, and many, many people came and raised over $1 million for Ethiopia. Then at that point, we thought, well, this is really good. This works, this birthday idea. We should probably do it all year, not just in September. So it's 2 years to make that decision. So the good thing is 1 in 10 people are born in September. It's a big birth month. It's like, I think it's like 9 months after Christmas and New Year's, and it's cold in the Northern Hemisphere. I don't know. I'm a September baby, so I try not to put too much thought into that. But we built this website, My Charity Water. Really simple website. One of our big donors is a guy called Michael Birch, who founded Bebo.com, which sold to AOL for a significant amount. One of the world's great viral minds. He helped us out. We had a junior coder, Michael, and some support from a few other people, and our founder Scott involved. Built a website called My Charity Water and launched it, which is a really simple website where people can do a couple of things. First concept was anyone can give up a birthday and have their own fundraising page. They'll know 100% of every donation will directly fund water projects, and they know they'll get proof. They'll know that everything that they fundraise will be marked on GPS. And we put it out there and kind of seen what would happen with it. Bit over 2 years in, that platform's raised over $14 million from about 14,000 fundraising campaigns. Really simple, people can add their own photo, their own simple mission statement, and set their own goal and track it. If they raise $5,000, the average cost of a well, we put a plaque on the well with their name on it, which really responds to people. People want to go with their friends and try to change the life of a community.
I wanted to ask a question really quick about just going back a little bit on the overhead for donations for restricted projects. Can you explain how the two different funds, the well works, and how your overall fundraising?
Yep. So 2 bank accounts, operations bank account, water bank account. Operations bank accounts, much smaller. Our budget's kind of like this, and we're trying to do this with water as we scale digitally. Operations is funded by people who just give to operations. So we have a group called The Well, which is major donors. They're given 3-year commitments. Every cent of their money directly funds operations. Ink in the office printer, travel time. Even our programs teams travel to the field. We're really nutty about it. And then every cent that we fundraise through online channels, every cent we raise, people write a check for water projects, 100% goes. Someone sends in a $5,000 check, $5,000 goes into direct project costs. We pass it all on to a partner. So it's basically as simple as that. And then we keep fundraising. We found major individual donors purely given to ops who are really tightly connected to our mission to really work. They're really like our greatest investors. I mean, people in that, there's a lot of the tech world's a leader in that group. But we found it being relatively easy to scale. 2 years ago, it was our biggest challenge. Now we've worked it out for the meantime. But our fundraising model is such that my team's 2 with a $16 million goal. So we don't have a fundraising model where every million we raise for water, we're going to add another person to go and get more checks from big donors. We're going to expand this word of mouth effect and see how quickly we can scale it. So what we're doing with My Charity Water and what's worked is this grassroots platform where people can go out there and fundraise amongst their friends. Now, financially, there's really a 3-fold benefit to this fundraising model for us. Financially, it's very lucrative. Average donation size is about $80 for us, which is very typical of the sector for an online donation. Average fundraising campaign is $1,000. Of those that successfully raise money, 2 years in for me, and half the people that start a fundraising campaign don't raise any money, and all these things I've done to change it have done nothing. Keep failing tests, but we learn something. The next big thing is that if you're doing a fundraising campaign, it stands to reason that you can raise more than you can give, or you can at least just give and no one's going to give you any money if you're a bad fundraiser. Every fundraising campaign is a word-of-mouth marketing campaign. So just do this with me for a second. Think for a second if you gave up your next birthday, and if you want to, pull up charitywater.org/birthdays at any time on your smartphone. You can pledge to give up your birthday. We just launched that. It took us 5 years to launch that page, by the way. So 2 years to come up with more than September, 5 years to launch a proper birthday landing page. If you gave up your birthday, the 10 people you'd ask first, I guarantee, think about them, they're the 10 people you influence most in the world. It's your immediate family, it's your best friends, it's your co-workers. Word of mouth marketing is the most powerful marketing. This is the people you influence most in the world that you're asking to give to water. You're going to educate yourself about the water issue, because the third item, after this word of mouth influence, after this scaling financially effect, is that when you're fundraising, you're truly giving service. You're going to work for 3 months for the cause. You're doing a lot. It's a lot more effort than simply writing a check or simply signing up for monthly donations. It's an involved experience. And on top of that, we're able to deliver a really cool customer experience back to them that I'll get into. So what it looks like a little bit like this. And I'm sorry my aspect ratio is off a little bit here, but I think it's kind of visible. This is a campaign from one of my friend's daughters, little Maylee. She wanted to raise $200. She raised $303. A 7-year-old raising $300 is like one of us raising $1 million. Right? So really impactful. So we've got a lot of those. We have this huge grassroots effect of individuals raising small amounts, but it adds up to a lot. We've also had individuals raise a really large amount. This was one of our biggest in September campaign. Jay Madden, the editor of Ink, Scott spoke at their conference, and then at their dinner they raised about 60 grand. She wound up raising over $100,000. So we've had at the top end, this is the interesting thing. So this year I have a $12 million fundraising target for My Charity Water. We'll have about 12,000 fundraisers. I'm projecting about 150 will raise over $10,000. And the ones we've had through so far, Adam Lambert, Justin Bieber did his 2nd birthday in a row and asked his fans to give up their birthday. Justin Bieber tweets about you. Your tweet deck explodes like a slot machine. So there'll be a few significant people. Is there a question?
Speaking of that 2nd birthday, or second, let's do it in a second. One person asked, how many donors do you get that will give a 2nd renewal next year, so 2nd birthday renewal? We
don't know very well yet, because we have only had people being able to give up, a very small number of people be able to give up 3 at this point, because it's so young. What we know is that the average fundraising campaign sparks 13 donations. So what we're very interested in is, can we turn one of those 13 donors, if we can turn 2 of those 13 donors into a birthday campaigner through a great customer experience, scale's there. And big scales there. And that's how most of the big internet companies are trying to grow. So that for us is a really key number that we're pretty focused on. But we also want to drive these, and the big campaigns are, they're schools, they're groups, they're celebrities and influencers, they're people that you kind of know would do that. But cumulatively, the little guys are going to raise more than the big guys. The 10,000 people who raise under 5K will raise about $7 million out of 12 this year, and that's where a lot of the scale is as we kick it along. So I wanted to quickly bounce around with 5 biggest learnings and then get into questions, which kind of push around a few things. But the biggest thing I'd say is a lot of people look at what we're doing at Charity Water and go, oh, cool, I need one of these web pages, and then we win. This is a tool. It's a really useful tool. You can do really interesting things with it. The reason it works for us, though, is because of primary brand values. It's because of our commitment to storytelling, our commitment to inspiration, and a bunch of other things. So with that, a few things that have really struck me with. One of the biggest ones is be positive. I say this a lot. My Twitter bio is pontificating Prince of the Positive, so I'm biased towards positivity. But for us, it really works. I often say the most important part of our digital strategy is inspiration. For me, my job is to take our story to the world and hopefully trigger a lot of fundraising campaigns and donations. Excuse me, just have a sip of water. What's really important to me is storytelling is a story that comes. When we launch an online campaign, we typically launch with a really compelling inspirational video. And we don't have a, excuse me, we don't have an ROI in the video on the upfront, but often these videos will be the key to campaigns that will raise over $1 million. So this positivity element's really important to us. And for us, it stands to reason. There's a lot of emotions you can play with, particularly if you're with a cause. Like, I can show you a library of images that'll make you cry. I'm not going to do that, though. I can also show you a bunch of images like that smiling kid that make you feel great. And we much prefer pushing with the positivity. Because the nature of the new world that we're dealing with in this web world, back in the day, you really only had the opportunity to interrupt people. TV ad or a direct mail piece, and you've got to stop them and you've got to get an immediate reaction and trigger them to action. Now we're living in a sharing economy where people want to pass things around. So if I want a really impactful piece of direct response, maybe I don't want to go positive, I don't want to really tell a story, I want to really hit them in the gut and get them to pull out their wallet. But in a world where I want people to share stories and tell their friends and I want them to inspire them to take a long-term action, I want them to feel great. And at a simple human level, as a human, I want to be friends with people. I don't want to be friends with someone who makes me feel bad, makes me feel guilty, and then asks me for money. Right? None of us do. I want to be friends with someone who makes me feel good, who gives me positive feelings. And I've seen this really play into effect with our donors. And quick story, so this is Helen, she's from Uganda. When I first started at Charity Water, one of the first things I did was dig into the Google Analytics, and I was coming from the perspective where it was my favourite charity. I really loved the brand, and a lot was working, and so I was trying to work out, all right, what works, because we'll do more of that. And I was looking at Google Analytics, and a lot of the big spikes we'd had of activity were around obvious dates. Nick Kristoff had wrote an article in the Times, big bump, launched a few major campaigns, and it was this one bump that no one knew where it came from. It was a low period, July. We weren't quite sure what was going on. As we dug into it, it was all Helen's story on the website. And so Helen's story, to tell it, I'll send a link around on Twitter later, but to tell it simply, one of our programs reps, Becky Straw, who's now running a really cool little startup nonprofit called the Adventure Project, she was in Uganda inspecting water projects. And so she's just there with the programs teams, didn't really want to do the whole hoo-ha of people turning up and celebrating, just wanted to get in and see how is the community working with the project. They turn up at Helen's village and they knew they were coming. So there's a whole bunch of women blocking the road and singing and banging on drums. And Helen in particular really drew her eye, and she was this vivacious, charismatic woman. And so she started talking to her about how life's changed. And she's doing her reports, and Helen said a lot of things that we hear all the time about how water changes communities. She's talking about how before she would go and fetch a couple of jerry cans, it was all she could carry. It'd take her 2 hours to go and bring it back to her hut. And she had to make a lot of decisions about what to do with this water, because there's a limited, finite supply. It's hard to get more. So she'd work out, all right, well, we've got to cook food for the family. We've got to give the kids some water to drink. We've got to wash the school uniforms. Got to make sure the husband's set up. Going to clean the house a little bit. Maybe it'd be nice to do a little bit of gardening. And Helen would always put in last place herself. So cleaning herself, having extra water for herself to use was at the bottom as it would be for any mother. And she said to Becky that now she has water, now she's so clean, for the first time she felt beautiful. And this is something you'd never put in a dry report. This is an incredible story. I love telling this story, I love reading it, I share it with people all the time. And what happened was we pushed this story up our email and everyone shared it. Because it's a great story. It makes you feel great. This is something I want to tell all my friends about. If I'd sent an appeal about a horrible situation and kids who are dying and a fundamental, all that thing, I might get a quick response. No one's going to share it unless they're a sociopath. Simple. Second one's a challenging one, right? You guys will like this one. Second thing I learned is don't ask for money. We don't ask for money a lot, and it stands to reason in person, but I find that things that we do in person often don't correlate to how we market. So I was just with a non-profit for a day in Australia. I was just about getting a visa, and a friend of mine, I went and do a day with them. Very super traditional Australian non-profit, very direct mail heavy, worried about a greying demographic and trying to work out how to adapt. And essentially, they've long tradition of direct mail, and they basically turned their website into their direct mail. So it was brochureware, and it was the same thing, like 2 lines of copy and then donate now, and very conversion focused, that's where we go. And so I asked them, okay, this makes sense, and we're trying to talk about their web presence. Tell me about if you're talking to someone, if you meet someone in person, how do you do it? And they don't go in and tell them 2 lines of a story and ask for money. They go to churches, they tell stories, they talk about the mission, they talk about what's people. They told me this great thing I thought about how they regularly bring people into their offices, walk around, meet staff, all the staff will tell a personal story, and then that's how they recruit their volunteers. And my point of view is that's a better model for your web presence than bringing across what's happening in your direct mail. Because it's this relational piece that can drive a longer term action. So for Charity Water, our focus is on relationships. What I'm trying to do is build a grassroots community of 1 million people that are going to stay with us for 10 years, and they're going to give what they can if they're inspired, they're going to fundraise for more, and they're going to influence their friends to join us as well by sharing stories and passing things along. This is what a lot of our websites, our pictures look like. This was our end of year fundraising appeal. So I'm sure a lot of end of year fundraising appeals came out of this room, right? I walked to work one day in late December, and I left home and I got to work and I had 3 fundraising appeals. Just reminded me, you can give now for tax. And I was like, oh good, okay, I knew you were a charity and I know it's the end of the year. Thank you for the reminder. Our end of year piece was a really cool video that said thank you. It's pretty fast paced, it was exciting. I had the feeling a lot of people switch off in the last week of the year, so watching a 3-minute video is something they'd enjoy to do. And we put them to our website, and we have a donate button on our website, and I'm sure they'll get there. But very relational thank you message that we'll click through. This is another one. This was our wrap up, content heavy, didn't have a donate button. Our next email we're sending next week is a 1,500 word, maybe 2,000 word piece about pump mechanics in India. There is actually a donate button right at the bottom, so it was a different one for us. But even when we launch campaigns, the best performing videos for Charity Water are emails that look like this, where there's a video and watch a video. And donate's frequently a smaller option. If I talk to all you guys, I'm going to ask you to give up a birthday. I'm not going to ask you for 20 bucks.
Someone asked questions as you were talking about not asking for money, right? Someone asked how much training do you provide for your peer-to-peer fundraising people that who are donating their birthdays? Is there a community? Is there a web person or a person that trains these people?
Not really. There should be. That's my next hire. Actually, I'm grooming an intern, but not really. We could do a lot better there, but the elements are pretty simplistic. People kind of get it. Yes, we trend young. Yes, we trend early adopters. Absolutely, but everything's going that way. You should see my dad on Facebook. He's promoting his vet surgery like crazy. He wants all my friends in New York to like his vet surgery in far north Queensland, Australia, and I'm trying to explain to him they're not going to bring their dogs, but the point is that it's going this way. But we don't do a lot. We want to do more, but we find that really inspired people come up with things that we'd never see. I saw a picture the other day of 2 little girls who were 7 at Stuytown selling pine cones for $2 each and their mum passing things on. I've seen these things happen. I see little kids be the best fundraisers we have out there, or at least the most compelling. 2 weeks ago, we had a couple, I don't know where they came from or how they found us, they've been dating for a long time and they just got engaged, but he wasn't going to propose until they funded a well, $5,000. And so we started sharing this. I was like, oh, we're going to get them married. And we shared it a bit, but this is the thing, that they're creating stories that I can pass on. So I don't need to do a really hard-fought fundraising appeal all the time to all the same people, but some of our donors probably get really inspired by this story or by another story or something that kicks up. So we could and should do a lot more, but we've had a lot of success without having to do that much.
And a quick follow-up now, someone asked about demographics on average age and parallel with average gift.
I don't have a lot of that data at this point. A lot of it we're expanding on. I don't think about demographics barely at all. We have a very different model. So we're building this word of mouth movement where things are raising up that we never would have found otherwise and that will connect with us in different ways. So I have stories like, here's a case in point. A church in Seattle called Eastlake Community Church found us. One day they were looking at interesting websites. They were trying to redesign their website and someone had said, oh, check out the Charity Water website. One of their guys stuck on the website for about an hour, watched a video of Scott telling his story, got super inspired, sent it around to all his office. They all got pumped. The main pastor there, Ryan Meeks, got excited. And they're like, all right, cool. Oh, we can do some fundraising. We'll do a fundraising campaign. They got a liquor license for their church in Seattle, this big warehouse, and they raised $260,000 in a night. But this is the point of give, raise, and influence. They've been with us for 2 years now. We've taken them to the field. They've done their own documentary. They have funded some of our operations and our ball. They've had all sorts of parishioners do major fundraising campaigns. Matt Hasselbeck, the Seattle Seahawks quarterback, joined our operations fund as well, gave up a birthday, and then followed all our staff on Twitter. That's how connected he got. And now they're doing a campaign where not only are they going to do the Drinks for Drinks event again, they're asking all their parishioners to fundraise alongside them, and they're trying to raise $1.1 million in the next 3 months for biosandfielders in Cambodia. But the point is, yeah, we'll work out how to market directly to churches and faith communities, probably at some point, but these things pop up that we never would have found or we never would have identified that got out there. At the simplest level, the people we believe that connect with Charity Water, I call them seekers, are people who want to change the world and want to see their impact, and we're giving them a path to do so. But I don't know who people are going to go get to donate. If you guys all gave up your birthday and sparked 13 donations each and 2 of each of them fundraised, the effect's going to amplify, but we've got a whole bunch of different demographics on the room. None of you are more important than another one for me. But again, there's a lot of things we're doing right, there's some things we're doing wrong as well. And we love Do It Wrong Quickly is something that I love. So mentor of mine, Mike Moran, came out of IBM. He's a long time direct marketing background guy, search guy, did all the search for IBM.com, wrote a book called Do It Wrong Quickly, and it's something we've always stuck with. We try a whole bunch of things, and then we rigorously measure them, and we try and do more of what works and less of what doesn't. But we say do it wrong quickly all the time. We were one of the first brands on Instagram. Instagram just sold to Facebook for a cool $1 billion. Us and the Boston Celtics were the first 2 brands on there in January because of do it wrong quickly. We've been using it. We have cool photos. Let's try it out.
Someone asked if we were on Pinterest and how you guys are using that.
Yeah, we're on Pinterest. We're doing it wrong quickly. Yes, exactly. So heard about Pinterest, thought it was cool. Emailed all staff and said, is anyone using Pinterest? Because I'm not, and you're better off if you're a native. Sure enough, 3 girls in the office. It's a female-heavy site. Do use Pinterest, wanted to run our property. Are doing great. I check in on it every now and then. Been featured in about 6 or 7 blog posts about it, building a community, people are sharing things. I just saw one of my staff do a book interview about it. But we're just doing it wrong quickly. There's no harm, it costs nothing. It's a bit of a time investment, they're doing it in the spare time. We have these storytelling assets, let's share them. We even do this with big projects. We launched this thing called Water Forward last year. It was the brainchild of Michael Birch, again, from Bebo.com. He had a concept that 800 million people without clean drinking water. There's about 800 million people on Facebook and Twitter right now. What if we matched them up? Build a website which is basically a page of faces, and you can only get in there for a $10 donation to put your face in the book. The trick is you can't add yourself. So I'm a member of the book. I could add any of you guys. If you just landed on the page, you'd have to wait for someone to have an act of kindness to add you. We spent a bit of time on this. We launched it with no real clear financial target. We launched it knowing that it probably might fail, but we launched it as an experiment in giving. We talked to Michael about it. I was like, because I was trying to look at my revenue projections for this year. I'm like, Michael, what will it do? And he goes, I don't know, might do 10,000, might do 100 million, which is really helpful for where we're going to go. We're still playing with it and trying to get it right. We've redone the flow of signing up 3 different times, but we're rigorously focused with this website on getting the viral factor above 1. If more than, on average, slightly more than 1 person who connects with the site pays it forward to slightly more than 1 person, potential astronomical growth. We haven't got there yet, but at the very least, we're just trying to push the envelope. But do it wrong quickly is something that I say about 3 times a week. Be personal is really important to us. And personal is not first name personalization in an email. That's not authentic personalization. That's familiar. So Seth Godin just wrote a post saying it's very familiar, but it's not personal. Personal takes time. Time's always hard. We got 30 staff. Believe me, time's the hardest thing. But personal's the most important thing that we do. It's fundamentally important to who we are. We find that on our website, we have a page about staff, which is just photos and like a 3-line bio, and it's one of our most popular pages. People are just really curious about connecting at that point. One example of this we did last year, which is the thing that I was proudest of what we did last year, was these thank you videos. So typically on September 7th, our birthday, we go into the field, do a live drill, and make a video on the ground and upload it so people can see where their money's going that day. Last year we were funding a $1.2 million drilling rig, and if we'd done a live video of it, it would have been a live video of a truck being built, which would not be very compelling content. So we decided to do something different that we'd had a little idea about for a while and just thank as many donors as possible personally for our birthday. So we got all our staff, divided them into teams, gave everyone 20 different fundraisers of all levels, not our top fundraisers, all sorts of fundraisers. Had them come up with their own little idea, got volunteer video shooters, volunteer video editors, set up a studio with seats in the office, spent about 2 weeks and nights on it, made 250 personal thank you videos for donors that are quite nicely produced, knocked it out. We had no financial goal for this. We were doing this because we thought it was right. I fundamentally believe everyone who got one of these videos will be bonded to us for life, but for us it was more of a statement of who we are and what we're trying to do, to invest that time in our donors just to say thank you. I made one for a dog. My friend's dog raised $300 for its birthday, September 2010. And the fundamental, most important thing, and you've probably heard me say this a few times, is help them see their impact. We, as an executive team at Charity Water, we've been thinking a lot recently about what differentiates us, because we're completely different to really any nonprofit, really almost any brand. We're at that point when it's not that we're trying to solve the world's water crisis. A lot of great organisations are doing that. We partner with great organisations who do that, but we're very different to most of them. The differentiator for us, the why of our purpose, is to help them see their impact. So one of the things that this looks like is dollars to projects, and as a digital guy, this is what I'm most excited about that we've launched. So within the My Charity Water platform, where people give up fundraisers, that's only 2 years old. Basically what happens is every quarter, we have 100% of the money that closes. We send it all to the field and put it to work. And then it takes about 18 months for all the projects to get built, for them to get photographed, GPS coordinates, and then we have all this data. So we have data of donors, names, all sitting here, 100% goes. Data of wells, photos, this stuff here. So we just build an algorithm to match it up. Some of these have plaques on them and things as well. So here's an example of it. This is Graham Hill, who writes a Tree Hugger blog. It's a really cool blog. He did a birthday, tries to raise $5,000. He's awesome. So he raised over that, 6,290. His birthday back in, I think it was September, October 2009. We were just able to report to him, hey, Graham, here's where your money went. So he and every donor received this dollars to project reporting. So on the website, he has a little clipboard with his projects. He funded these. 100% of the money was his that funded these projects. So he can click through into a direct project page. So here's my Arato village. He can see that it's in Ethiopia. He can see how many people live there. He can see his donors' names and remember who donated in 2009 for his birthday. The view is the comment. They probably wrote something like, happy birthday, Graham, you're a legend. He can go up and click through into photos, see the community, see the people, see a photo of the well with his name on it, see the people who've been influenced through his fundraising. And he can also see the GPS coordinates, which is frequently, it's kind of really cool, right? This is the impact. Sometimes you can even see structures. A lot of time there's not structures. This one's kind of cool because there is. But here's the thing. If we believe if we can help people see their impact, it's the most important thing we're doing. One, because hopefully they'll have such a great customer experience. Customer experience is something I say all the time and I don't hear a lot of in the nonprofit sector. Generally, the customer experience I have with nonprofits is I give money, get an inspiring story, give money, get a tax receipt, get asked for more money, 80% of the time. But we want to drive this great customer experience because they'll bond to us, hopefully, for a long time. But more importantly, so little Marley, who I showed, raised $300 for her 7th birthday, my friend's daughter. I'm so excited about when we get to show her reporting and show her where her $300 went to help fund a well, because I fundamentally believe that when she sees that impact and she realizes she has changed the world with her birthday, her 7-year-old birthday, will unlock a spirit of giving, will unlock a spirit of generosity in her that will live on forever. So for Charity Water, this is the most important thing we're trying to do. It's really hard. Really, it sounds very easy. We got money, we got projects. Really hard to do. Getting great photos from the field, assorting data, uploading photos, pressuring partners to do things differently so they can get us that data. I've got a team right now cranking on getting everything right and making sure there's 100% integrity in the data. It works really hard. We changed our hiring process, we changed how we're structured to focus around this see their impact point. But for us, we think it's the fundamental thing we can do that will, it's really what we're all about. So that's the most formal stuff I have. I don't know, I'd love to take a bunch of questions, dive into things, whatever you need.
Got one over here.
Well done.
Thanks, man. There's a lot and I talk fast.
I mean, I just wanted to speak first as someone who's often targeted by Paul's critiques on and who using sad images. And I think it speaks volumes, though, to what you just said, that we've had about 45 messages by Twitter in the past half an hour while we were speaking of folks in this room asking questions and their networks. Somehow whenever we publicize, hey, pay $50 and come to the luncheon next week, it doesn't have the same sort of sharing impact. I'd love to hear your perspective on what happened with Invisible Children and the Coney story as well. The mainstream media loved to say that it was this big scandal of a group that had an impactful video and they raised attention faster than they were able to direct it towards the cause. And yeah, I'd love your perspective on that story.
It's an interesting one.
Or how about more specifically, what do you think other nonprofits should learn or ignore in the coverage of the criticism around the police? How about that?
Yeah, 2 things for context for starters. One is I don't think we know yet because the story's halfway through from where it might go and what it might do to their organization. So we know where we are right now, but I think it'll be judged differently in 5 or 6 years' time than it will be at this moment. Second piece is I think that generally, because I think a lot of causes, we're all really interested in Coney, right? Like how do we do a Coney? And you're going to see 200 different causes try and do what they're doing. There's someone in a room right now, somewhere in America saying, but we've got to do it like the Coney thing. I think you have more to learn from Coney if you're launching a really cool short film or a movie than if you're a nonprofit at this point, fundamentally. However, I think there's a bunch of interesting things. The first most interesting thing to me is people think there's online, offline. There isn't. We have Twitter questions in this room, right? There's no difference. It's just an add-on into the world we're in. Most of the success, the reason this thing popped like crazy, the reason it got its original explosion was because Invisible Children has spent 8 years building an in-person network of people who are on board with the mission who get there. There's a great post by Dana Boyd on Huffington Post, she's a Microsoft researcher, about how a lot of the early spread, she had it mapped out, was a lot of middle America, young evangelicals, was a really core demographic of what originally kicked it off. Then the celebrity influence kind of kicked it a bit further and it went global. Fascinating thing on top of that is the global piece. I think we forget about a lot as US-based marketers. The first week, there's 75 million video views. 30% of people watched it in full, which is wild. 30 minutes of video to get someone's attention like that. 2.7 million people took the pledge to support it. 1 million were America, 1.7 million were the rest of the world. A lot of people out there. We tend to forget about that. The things that I'm taking from it that I'm interested in, as a brand, Charity Water, we don't spend enough time thinking about in person and building that grassroots movement. I think if you have a grassroots movement of support for your cause, it's really impactful. And this is something we forget a lot about as well, as I think marketing for causes is, there's so much people can do beyond giving us money, or even fundraising, there's so much more. And I think that we don't have enough options for people to do more. Everyone has a voice now, it's easy to amplify it to the world. There's not really any cause that you can get super involved in past the money point. You know, I remember as a kid signing up for Amnesty letter writing to send letters just because I wanted to do more. You know, there's this finite amount of money I can give, and I think there's this untapped resource of sharing. But yeah, and the critiques are kind of sad, and it's very sad to see, I mean, personally for the people involved, how it's kind of pressured them. But the biggest negative I took away from it was I saw all these people, I'm sure you guys saw the same, really sharing this story because they thought that it might do something. Because coming back to it, I believe people want to make a positive impact in the world, but they just don't know a path. I saw people who never care about anything really, you know, except for like who's winning The Bachelor and sports scores, right? You know, not really interested in sharing much more, who went out and shared this. And then there was this little bit of people saying, no, you're wrong, it doesn't actually there. Then when there was all the negative publicity, I'm worried that all these people might have felt a little stupid. And I really worry about that because if these people have been look stupid in front of all their friends, taking a chance on trying to make a difference in the world, I worry about how that will influence them long term.
Speaking of, I've heard lots of coordinators say, I want to do it like charity work. So we say it's like opportunity. What's the next greatest thing you guys have coming up?
What do we have coming up?
Looking at to keep this growth. I mean, you have ambitious goals. You want
Yeah.
to get 100 million.
Yep. We, for a lot of us, it's more of the same. For a lot of us, the core thing would be like Charity Water, and I was a consultant for a long time with really big companies, helping big companies talk to people like they're people on the internet. So I put that hat back on sometimes and thinking about what's to learn. It's not get a fundraising platform, though you can do a lot of cool things with them. The core stuff for me is creative and really core brand values. When from the founder down, we have a bias towards storytelling, we have a bias towards design, we have brand above all else. That's what's providing the engine for a lot of growth. For us, we've got a lot of optimizing to do. We've got a lot of focused expansion of our tool. It's been completely organic 2 years in, done $14 million, but now we're thinking more about biz dev and sales and whatnot. But for us, it's mainly about continuing to inspire our base, give them great stories, create great content. If we can get this community of really inspired, engaged individuals, and then give them a bunch of different ways to make a difference, we think it'll pop.
Or some questions out there?
Yeah.
So a lot of people here are coming from a very different perspective, where I think Charity Water, as you've been explaining, has the founders set this model and these priorities, and that's really been able to trickle down through organization-wide communications. For people where they have a similar idea, but have to convince a CEO of going in that direction, I'm curious if you've thought of things like that, or the flip side of it is saying, and I know tons of organizations who do this, they say, I want to do it like Charity Water, but we have X, Y, and Z working really well, so we are not going to give up on these programs and completely go the other direction.
Yeah.
Have you given thought to, and granted there's some ways to incorporate some of what you're talking about, stories, we all know stories are key, but do you have ideas for that convincing people upward or incorporating?
First thing I'd say is do it wrong quickly. Find a test, find a pilot, get something out there and execute it, because there's nothing like results. There's a lot of theories and there's a lot of like, we could do this. What's a more tangible chunk that proves that you're doing something in the direction you're going? It's difficult with organizations that aren't yet feeling pressure from it. So while it's more of an opportunity than a threat, it's going to be a slower process to get change, and it's primarily cultural. Every brand I've worked with, we've done work in my past with New York Times, with Cisco, with Australia's biggest telco, Telstra, and helping them adapt to social media. It's not the tools, it's not the shiny objects, it's a cultural change, fundamentally. And that takes a lot of time and effort. There's nothing like tests. There's nothing like getting some things out there and executing something that's moving in the direction of what you want to do and making an impact that can help drive attention. Biggest thing I'd say is, do you have someone in your community that can make an amazing story? Because I can't do that, I don't have those skills. If I was transported and dropped in a different organization right now, that's the first person I'd get. It's my great content and storytelling team that make me effective as a marketer in this new approach. But you could knock out some really inspiring content for a very small budget pretty quickly. And if you inspire your base with that stuff and kick it along, but for me it's always about small tests and execution. It's about having a strategic goal and moving towards it, rather than getting blinded by the tools and the first thing I could do. The other thing I'd say is help people see their impact. I think that's the biggest opportunity that is being completely ignored by most of the sector. Because this is really interesting from a branding point of view, from a marketing point of view, from a storytelling view. Really exciting, like these new tools we can do. Well, we can raise more money in so many interesting ways. The thing that really matters though is that we can connect people with impact in really interesting ways. And my fundamental belief for us is that if we get that right, that's where it all is. We've got a lot of hard work to go to really get there. But I think everyone in this room has the capacity to unlock that and bring people closer to the impact they see in the field. And it could be something simple. I was talking to my programs team in the kitchen the other day about taking photos when they're in the field, text them to me, and we'll just put them on Instagram. Because I love the idea of someone waiting for a bus here in New York and then being like, whoa, someone from Charity Water standing at this well in Uganda. And that kind of brand value that connects. Yeah.
I was just wondering, you said, I think at the beginning that your digital team specifically is just like 2 or something right now.
Yeah.
I was curious, that means you must be doing some stuff out-of-house, some stuff in-house. So how have you decided to break that down and why?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a digital team and a creative team, so a bit of our structure. So at the front end of the business, we've got a couple of people doing traditional fundraising, primarily focused on operations and relationships with key people. We have my kind of marketing partnerships department where I only have one person doing corporate partnerships at the moment, but I'm hiring a couple more. We're building an experience department that's purely going to be focused on delivering a great experience to our supporters and the customer experience and making them wow factor, solving problems, tying in great reporting, connecting people with their impact. We've got one there right now. And then we have a creative team of about 4 that's very strong. So the creative team's really important. Great creative director, Victoria Harrison, print designer, going to have a copywriter and a filmographer there and another web designer, and then a tech team. So tech and creative kind of service the organisation. We do everything in-house, so we outsource nothing. I get a little, I don't spend money on agencies, but I get a little bit of agency support around major campaigns. But for our major campaigns we knock out this year, we'll do 2 major efforts. We'll build a video, we'll do a microsite. We'll send our founder, Scott, who's really our CMO, chief storyteller, into the field with our creative director, and we do have a contractor, awesome filmographer, Paul Pryor, who'll do some of that stuff. But it's a pretty small team.
So all the development,
yep,
that's all in-house?
all in-house, yeah. Yeah, on the tech side, we got senior director, director, a senior software developer, junior software developer, and a front-end developer. And we're trying to double that. Need a lot more techies to really be a tech company.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, their first introduction to your group might have been all the news coverage a couple of years ago with the 9-year-old girl who lost her life. What have you learned from that in hindsight now? And I think there are a lot of groups. I mentioned Mercy Corps, and what Lisa did with them. Mercy Corps would even say they sort of they had that turning point in their history with the tsunami fundraising and things like that. There are a lot of nonprofits who find through choices not their own, something happens in the external environment that catapults their name recognition and the fundraising. Would you do things differently, or do you have lessons that you've learned now looking back on both the resources and the media attention that one tragic story brought the organization?
Yeah, I'll quickly touch on that for context. Last year, we had a little girl called Rachel who was giving up her 9th birthday. She was trying to raise $500 or something. And her family was in a car accident, and she was in intensive care for a few days. She eventually passed away a weekend after the car accident. Her family, she had reopened her fundraising campaign for her 9th birthday and directed their friends and church members and whatnot to give. People just wanted to help. You know, people are good fundamentally, right? Over about 3 days, I mean, I gave $20 when it was like $1,000, and then over a weekend, it went to about $30,000 from their immediate community of people trying to rally support. Got picked up by Seattle media, kicked up to a few $100,000, got picked up by national media in the US and then international media. Nick Kristof wrote a column about Rachel. There was this beautiful eulogy, really. She twice donated her hair for like Love for Locks. They donated all of her organs afterwards. We had a guy donate on the page and leave a comment who'd received one of her kidneys, talking about how the spirit of Rachel was living on. So it was hugely impactful. She eventually raised $1.2 million in a few months, which was a huge portion of it. Yeah, absolutely unplanned and couldn't kick with it. I think the most fundamental thing I learned, it confirmed some of what I think works, and it's that network model. The reason Rachel was giving up her birthday is because she went to Eastlake Church. We'd actually just been in CAR with the pastor from the church, and we found out about the accident as we were travelling home through Paris. But it was because of that word of mouth effect and that community element that kicked it along. But also just having the platform where people can do that. We talk a lot about people taking the charity water story and making it their story. And that's a really fundamental piece of what we're doing. So our brand's really important, our brand's really controlled, but today there's 1,000 people doing fundraising campaigns in different ways, in different voices to different audiences than we could ever control. Rachel's was an example of that. It was really Rachel's story people gave to. We had 25,000 donors on that campaign. It was just wild, the response rate from people. We're taking a mother, for us it come back to see the impact as well, so we're taking a mother and a family to Ethiopia in July for the anniversary of her passing, and we're going to show them, well, we're going to show them a lot of the wells, but there's hundreds of wells that Rachel's funded. We're going to do a bit of a content piece, but more about honouring Rachel's memory than a piece that pushes through. But yeah, if you have the platform and you have the story that people can make their own, you never know where things will come from it that can just explode like that.
What about the 2 out of 13 people to then do one their own? Do you expect the same sort of pickup for those donors than you would from friends reaching out to their 13 friends?
Haven't thought about it a lot yet. I don't know. You know, hopefully they've been really inspired and touched by Rachel, and hopefully they'll continue to be. I'll send them a video with a mother that honours her memory in July, and then we'll be able to send them dollars to project reporting. So they'll see which of the wells of Rachel's they've funded directly. So yeah, it's open. I really don't know what conversion to expect.
Let's take one more question.
Hey. Yeah, go.
It seems like, thanks. It seems like a lot of your strategies have really stemmed from simply being an organization with a great mission and a great personality in some ways, and your successes have kind of stemmed from just the core of who your organization is, just being yourself, kind of. What have you encountered, I guess in the vein of do it wrong quickly, have you encountered cases where being yourself actually doesn't resonate with your donors? I think that's a tension that nonprofits sometimes have. You know, this idea of being themselves, being their true selves, being their most inspired, wonderful selves, but then people not getting it or, you know, being into that. Do you ever encounter that with Charity Water and have any insights for organizations, you know, on that level?
I'm thinking. Firstly, I think that to your point about having a great mission and a great personality, I haven't really met a nonprofit that doesn't have a great mission. Like, that's the thing. Like, I always find I meet people from nonprofits and I talk to them, and they're awesome. Like, there's things that I have no idea they exist, and I talk to someone from there for 10 minutes and I want to give them $50. I'm like interested. I'm like, oh, that's great. I had no idea about, you know, cat lice in South America and how that's important. But frequently these things are really, there's a lot of good that can be done. So I think that frequently the story is told really badly. Like, I really think, do this exercise later. If you think your website's uninspiring, or you're worried about your marketing, or you're like, oh, we just don't get brand properly, like, talk to 10 people at your work, get them to tell you about their story, or just think about how humans do it with humans, and think about how that could be your web presence. I'm sure there's some people that haven't resonated quite with our message, but in general, we tend to build and build, you know. And again, this is the model about the word of mouth movement. Hopefully 2 will give up their birthdays, maybe 11 just don't care. They were just given so Paul stopped badgering me about giving money to his thing. But you're going to have that tip off, but if we can provide the right story in the right way for people to connect, we'll get there. And I think as well, it's different things with different people. Some people are like, I have a bunch of finance friends, right? They love our 100% model and they get really into that and they ask all sorts of detailed questions about it. I have other friends in the marketing world who just watch the video and are like, oh, it's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Here, you know, I'll give it to you next campaign. So you can provide different elements to different people. The third piece is you let people take your story and make it their story. They'll do things that you might not even be able to do as a brand. Like, the way our story and some of our videos are probably presented in churches across America is probably completely different to how people in Australia at a pub have talked about it, or these sorts of things, and that's great.